Hello, this is Jo from Cranberry Beads, and today I want to show you how to make a jumbo Cellini spiral bracelet. Okay, so let's switch to the overhead camera and show you what it is. So I made this bracelet going back many years now, and I taught it at a bead retreat, I think it was 7 years ago, so however long ago that is, quite a long time. So I've been fascinated with Cellini for a long time and made a few Cellini spirals over the years, and I thought, wouldn't it be great just to do a huge one, which is what this is if you look down from the end. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this. I've actually got 4 here, and I'm about to make another one to show you how to do it. So what we have here, we have 3 sets of the large bead. Okay, you can see on this one as well, this is green bead. This is the size 6, and it repeats 3 times. On either side of the size 6, we graduate down in bead size down to the smallest, which is the size 15. And this is what creates the lovely wave of the Cellini spiral. So we go from a 6 to a few 8s to 11s, 15s, and then we mirror that, come up here, and when we end up back at the 6. And then we repeat that 3 times. Okay, so you can certainly play around with the bead sizes and the counts to suit yourself. And the bracelet that I'm about to make is going to be a fraction bigger than these, so we'll see how that comes out. But these just fit me quite perfectly. They have a little bit of bend in them, which enables them to go over your wrist. Okay, I'll show you the measurements at the end of the video. So here we have a couple, and you can make these a bit taller or a bit narrower. This one here is a bit narrower than this one. It's just got a few less rows. I have a really bright version, not really my colours at all, but this spiral goes the other way. But apart from that, it's the same, but a few less rows again. Okay, so they all go from the 8, from the 6 to the 8s, 11s, 15s, and back up again. Okay, so there we are. You can make several and stack them. I think I'd prefer to stack them when the spiral was all going the same way, though. That one just doesn't look right together with the others. You can't turn it around and fix it. The spiral doesn't change. Okay, so let's take a look at how we get started with this. I have on my bead mat already some beads, so let me get rid of my head so we can see the full bead mat. Here we are. So let me take you through what we have here. Let me just get this lined up, and I've strung up some beads already, so I think it will be best to start relating them to what we are doing. So Cellini is peyote, using different size beads to create a shaping. Now we need a graduation of beads. So what we have here is we've started with a size 6, and that is this one here, and then we've gone on to some size 8s, 11s and 15s, repeat, and do it 3 times. Okay, now because this is peyote, technically this is tubular peyote, so what we will be doing is joining this into a circle. But first off, let me explain the stripes. Okay, so because it's peyote, our starting row starts in sets of 2s. So these 2 size 6s will actually be starting to offset in the first row. Okay, let me show you here. These 2 6s will end up being these 2. Okay, so why have I got 4 of the next colour bead? And that is because we will have 2 stripes of that colour. Then 1 stripe of this silver, 1 stripe each of this pink, and that pink in 11, and then 2 stripes of white 11, and then a 15 pink stripe, 2 stripes of the crystal AB in a 15, and then we're back to the other 15. It's a mirror image. Okay, so when you're stringing these on, just the thing I find helps is if you put them side by side like that, you can see if they match and immediately make some adjustments. So even stringing these up, I found a couple of mistakes and I had to unpick. So getting the first row correct is rather critical. Okay, so I am going to string these into a circle, and I'm going to go through a few more beads. And what I like to do is always start on the size 6 bead. But you can tie a knot here if you want, if you have challenges holding the tension. But I'm not fan of a knot. You could also use a stop bead. So just weave through these next few beads till you come out of the second 6. So there we are. That is our circle. What we're going to do is start off by taking the selection of beads in the order that they're on the mat, but remembering sometimes we're going to pick up more than one of each colour. But what we're going to do is always pick up one bead at a time. Simple rule is whichever bead you are coming out of, you pick up that bead. So I'm coming out of this pink 8, I pick up a pink 8. Coming out of this 8, I pick up a pink 8. And we're peyoteing, so we're always skipping one bead. Now, what will happen with peyote is that these first rows will want to flip over and back and twist, but we must address this before we start the next round. Okay, so I am fine letting them flip over because it's sort of impossible to keep them in their right place as they are. Okay, so I do not worry about that right at the moment. We continue. To the 11s, coming out of that pink 11, we pick it up, go in the next, next pink, next pink. And these two pinks are a little bit close in shade together. So if you want to choose colours that are a bit easier to see, that would not be a bad idea at all. So there we are. See it forming a little, So these are sitting the right way, that silver is not, but I can twist over as much as I want, but by the time I get round to that start of the next row, it might have flipped again, so I'm not going to worry. To the 15s. Trickier to see. Don't forget that last 15. Now you've got tiny bead, 15, sat on top of the 11. Okay. So I like to keep my tension on my working thread over my finger, and that helps keep everything in place. Can back up the sizes now. The 11s. I'm into the 8s. Don't forget we've got 2 stripes of this pink, just like we've got 2 stripes of that white there, but all the others are single stripes. So as you work around it, the tricky bit is when you get to a change in size, because you've got a smaller bead sitting on top of that big bead, and you can see that thread there. Well, we don't want to see that thread, so we close it up like this, and that's where you need to keep a little bit of a firm tension. Okay, we continue. We're coming out of the 6, we go into the next bead, and there we are. We've got a big bead set on a smaller bead, but do try and just keep that tension quite firm. So this is a little firm. While I'm holding this thread, this little bit of beadwork is quite firm here. Work down through the sizes. Might be keen to know what length of thread to use, and also what thread I am using. So let's start with the easy answer. The thread I'm using is Hannah. It's a nylon thread, and I do quite like it. And it comes in some lovely colours. I'm using the pink colour. But I would say use any thread that you are comfortable with. Most threads will work fine with this, and also you can use Fireline or similar types of thread. They will be just fine. So I'm going down into the small beads again. Tricky area. Crystal AB 15s. They are borderline invisible, aren't they? And that's the last 15. Okay, so on to how long a piece of thread should you use. You will need to add more thread to this. Almost certainly, unless you do a really skinny bracelet that doesn't have too many rows. So therefore, I would say that it's not worth using a really long piece of thread, because you'll just spend a lot of time pulling it through all the time. It just slows down your beading. So I probably am using about 1.5 meters. I have left quite a long tail because one of the interesting things about this is that you can pick up the tail thread and do more beading. It's not super long, but I could use it a bit more. Okay, so you could use 2 meters of thread, 3 meters even, have a long tail, wind it round a bobbin, and come back and use that. Particularly hate joining new thread, which I know some people do. We're coming to the end of this row. So remember, your first 2 rows get strung together with peyote, and then your first real row of peyote counts as row 3. So coming round to the end. Okay. Oh no, we're not. We've got another repeat to do. I was fooled by that tail thread coming out of there. So here we go. Another repeat. It feels nice and firm as I go around. So feels like it will be a nice tension. So when you choose your beads, you can use any type of, quite nice and even beads for this. These are all Japanese beads. I do prefer them mainly for their hole size, but you can use check beads as well. Now, I have used mostly Miyuki in this, and I've used 1 Toho. Now, colour here is the Toho, and because Toho beads is just slightly taller than Miyuki, I've put the taller 11 next to the 8, so it gives it a nice graduation. However, it doesn't matter too much. In the original bracelets, I used all sorts of beads and I didn't worry too much about it. I've used a lot of Matsuno because some of their colours are wonderful, even if you might need to cull them a little bit more. It's sometimes worth it if you get a beautiful colour. Okay, back into these tiny 15s. On the next row round it won't be so tricky because all of the beads are standing up and you'll be able to put your beads between the existing beads much easier. I have skipped 2 beads there instead of 1. I wonder if I can backtrack. Yes, I can. Sometimes that doesn't work, you split the thread. There we are. Like I said, those Mickey. Okay, we are nearly at the end of this row. So the next row you do need to pay a bit of attention, but the rows after that are quite easy. So we're at the end here. So we need to be going into this 6. So our bead sits on top of this, and then we'll need to step up. Okay, and we're stepping up at the end of the round. Let's take a look. So you can see it's already starting to deform into that wavy shape. Now what we need to do here is make sure all of our stripes are facing upwards and that it's not twisted. So that looks pretty good. Because I've held a tight tension most of the way around, they haven't flipped over. So what I mean by this is that you don't want that to happen. You don't want to get that little V shape of colour like that. You want it to be stripes going all of the same way. Because there's only 3 rows here, they can easily spin over, and you do not want that situation because that is not a stripe, it's a weird V. Okay, so keep looking about where you are as you go round. Okay, there are 3 beads in each stripe because we've done 3 rows. Yeah, even where we've got a double stripe of those white 11s, there's still 3 beads in each row. So let's continue. Pick up the bead you're coming out of, exactly the same, go into the next bead, and the next bead is sticking up, so you can easily see it. Same, 2 stripes of pink. Now I'm still holding the thread over my finger like this between adding each bead. It helps to keep it nice and firm with the tension. Working my way back down my pile of beads, which has drifted off the top of the camera, but it's still there. So you can see these stripes forming. Don't get your beading thread caught over the beads. We've all done that, haven't we? Rick is noticing it before you've done too many more beads. Going on from the 15s. 2 stripes of the white. To the pink 11s. Eights. Up through the big 6. tight going through these beads here, because shaping it around the size 6 is what will really start to form the shape. If you leave it loose in this area, that will make everything loose, because obviously the bigger beads have bigger holes, and so it's harder to keep the tension just there. So do keep pulling it nice and tightly, and don't get your thread caught. To keep saying that when I keep doing it. So I am pulling quite tightly. Did I mention that before? Okay, so I am going to finish this row and come back to you. I am back to show you the progress on this bangle. So here we are. It's taking shape nicely. You could call this done. You could add a few more rows. It's completely up to you. The more rows you do add, the more tighter it will get, because these points here will continue to grow inwards and they will make it smaller. So when you are sizing your bangle, keep that in mind. If it's a little bit bigger, if the fit is a little bit too big, you can add a few more rows and that will tighten it up a bit. Okay. So this bangle is actually a little bit smaller than my other bangles, even though the bead count is the same, and I put that down to this mostly being Miyuki beads, which are shorter. Okay, nearly all of the beads of one size are the same width, but they can be a different height. Okay, so do keep that in mind. I want to add one more row showing you how I help to shape it and how I bead when it gets to this size. Okay, so I'm starting with the size 6, and I like to sort of push this into a ridge and then pull, and it helps really shape it, and then I hold the tension tight. Going from big to small beads, I tend to push the needle up from below and beading towards myself. You may be doing it. Your thread will continue to get caught around the peaks on these bangles a lot, so do watch out for that. Tight tension is, I'm going to say, critical for giving this a nice shape. Okay, so I'm not doing anything different here. I am still adding the beads, the same on every row. Let's get tricky down in those 15s. Have to make sure, see that bead there? Have to make sure you get that click into place. That if you're used to peyote, you will know what that click is. The bead has to sit in its little slot. You can feel it and sometimes hear it as well. And I'm using a pink thread, and this has the consequence of making my size 15 crystal AB beads a little pinky. It's very difficult to see it in this photo, but in these beads do have a little bit of a pink tinge, which is quite nice on the bead mat. Maybe you can see the difference there. Bead thread going through them. So that's a nice side effect. Now when I'm coming up, going from smaller to bigger beads, I'm tending to go in across the top of the beadwork instead of this way. Just find it a little bit easier to do. You are dealing with shaped beadwork, and it tends to not loosen the beads if you do it that way. I'm finding if I do it this way, like this gets in the way of my needle, I'm trying to get it in, so I just go over the top, and it just seems to be much easier to bead that way. Find your own unique way of beading that works for you though. Especially coming up through these bigger beads, coming over from the top seems easier. So, as I've mentioned before, coming up to the big beads is where you really want to keep the tension tight, and I'm squeezing that ridge there and pulling. And you can feel it move between your fingers. Pull that and see that 6 wants to drop down into there a little bit more. This is a great exercise in tension, colour placement, and also paying attention so you get the stripes right. This is the hardest stitch here, going from the 11 to the 15, because you are putting a big bead into a small hole. You have to force it in there, and that's what creates the shaping. Do try and keep that quite tight there, otherwise that 11 will want to sort of fold over a little bit. To working on top of the beadwork now rather than from below. It's interesting to stop and think about how you bead sometimes, because we bead and we don't think about it. But I think people do tend to naturally adjust to a style that suits each other, or each person. I quite like to bead towards myself like this, but others prefer to bead away. I mean, I can turn this round, but then I find it quite awkward to hold that side. So I think it's hold it with my left hand and bead towards myself with the right hand. If I had to change, I would, but this feels more comfortable. You notice sometimes I'm not holding the thread. Usually coming through the smaller beads, the tension tends to hold a lot better, but when I come up to the bigger beads, it just wants to spring back. Now, one word about bangles versus bracelets. I know many people don't like bangles because they don't like having to put them over their wrist. They like to have a clasp. But this one is a little bit harder to convert to a bracelet, and I don't think it would look as good as a bracelet. I think the whole wave going right the way round is just part of the design, and that wouldn't look so good if you added a clasp. So sorry to say, if you are looking for a tricky to get through those 15s. If you're looking for a bracelet, then yes, sorry, this is a bangle. Oops, getting a notch. Two beads. 1, 2. Stepped up into that 6 there, though technically didn't need to because I'm finished. Now I'm going to weave off this thread by going down here and back and forth a little bit, but see that little bead there is quite loose. I'm going to make sure I pull that really tight, fold that over, and so it is as tight as it can be. You really want to sort of pull it like that. So here we are. This is the almost, except for finishing off the thread, this is the finished bangle. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So we're going to finish up this video looking at the sizing of the bangles. We have all of the bangles here, and they are all using the same bead count. But look at these two, for instance. This one is smaller than this one. So why is that? It is to do with the height of the beads used. This one is bigger because, especially in the size 8s, I have used Matsuno and Toho beads, and they tend to be taller. Okay, so these beads here are adding extra length to the whole circumference of the bangle, and therefore they are making it bigger. Whereas these beads here are Miyuki. There's one Toho, but even the size 11s, some of these are all Miyuki, and these are a mixture. Okay, so it does make a difference what bead you use, and that will affect the outcome. So it is not easy to size a bangle. You will have to do some experimenting to get it just right for you. Okay, so stand by for our next video where I will be attempting to make a larger bangle. Okay, so for now, have a little play with this jumbo Cellini bangle and see what you come up with.